definitely have like a Darth Vader sound there, I guess, or at least sounds like that up here. It's cool. So this morning, we have an interview with some folks from Teen Challenge. I'd like to welcome up Gavin and Ronnie. Give them a hand. Excellent. Or I think Rico, as they say, right? Rico? Yeah, it's a nickname. So now we're all family, right? Because we know each other's nicknames, right? No, so welcome, guys. I'm so glad that you're able to join us. Each year, we have Teen Challenge or New Life for Women come and join us on Mother's Day. And you'll get to hear some of that why as we go through our interview this morning. But I want to take a couple moments and welcome Gavin and Ronnie and just find out a little bit about what is Teen Challenge. Sometimes, I think back in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot more advertisement about it. I think now there's a lot of work that's going on, so there isn't as much time necessarily for advertisement. And so we might actually have seen somebody from Teen Challenge, Walmart, doing. Yeah, this weekend, you were at Walmart, or you're heading there?
I was at Hinsdale Walmart.
You were at the Hinsdale Walmart, so you might see two dudes at a table, three dudes at a table?
Two guys.
Two guys at a table, Ronnie?
Usually two guys at the table, and we try to bring drug awareness, try to encourage people that need help, and not just with drugs and alcohol, but really about life. Without God, we can do nothing, and just by us standing out there and being a testimony and a trophy to God's grace, that if He can save us, He can definitely save the person on the other side, of the table. So we just try to bring them hope.
I love what you said, a trophy of God's grace. Yeah. And that's what we've been talking about here, is this whole piece that God is seeking to reveal Himself through humanity. That's His plan, is to actually reveal through humanity, through all of us. Look at the person beside you and just think to yourself, wow, that person's one screwed up puppy. And now look back and just remember, someone else thought I was a screwed up puppy. Because you are. We all are. And I love what you said. We're a trophy of God's grace. God had kindness on you and me. He had no reason. He doesn't have a need to save us. He's God, right?
Right.
He's God all by Himself, doesn't need anything from us, but He chooses to reveal Himself to all of creation and say, hey, look at how kind I am. Look at how wonderful I am. I'm able to do this, not in an arrogant way, but rather in a way to be able to say, you get to know me. Kind of like the nickname thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're part of this family. I want you to know who I am. So going along with this, tell us a little bit more about Teen Challenge, guys, and your journey and what's going on. So Ronnie, why don't we start with you? Tell us your story, man.
My story starts in Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up in an Italian family, so there was a lot of drinking, a lot of party, a lot of festivity, a lot of food, and it was always a party for something. I just remember, my grandmother when I was younger, if I had a toothache, she would give me a shot of whiskey at like 5 years old, and it'll make you better, and the Italian guys, it'll put hair on your chest, and so you were a man if you drank. So I grew up seeing that. My father had a restaurant in the north end of Boston. He was a mafia guy, so he was a loving guy to the family when things are good, but when things were bad, my mother, she was a very bad alcoholic. She so much so she would leave me and my sister at places, and it was very embarrassing for my father. So he would come back, and he would end up being very violent to her, and we would watch that at a very young age.
Wow.
So I was kind of traumatized, I guess, at that point. But as we grew up, they separated. My mom got clean and sober through AA, actually, and had some experiences with God in an Italian family. You grew up in the Catholic Church. You were always you were forced into going to church because that was the thing to do.
Yeah.
But I always had an innate love for God. I didn't know that now till looking back on that, but God seems to be in my life, and it's kind of the typical story for Teen Challenge that when you look back, you always see that, wow, God was there. God was there. When He reveals Himself, you see His fingerprint all over your life.
That's awesome.
And then Teen Challenge, I struggled with drug and alcohol my whole life, but Teen Challenge had come into my life a couple times. A pastor down in Massachusetts had been my mom's pastor. And she would always say, go to Teen Challenge, go to Teen Challenge. And I always would be like, Teen Challenge is awesome. Those guys are unbelievable. They're doing something I can't do. But I never thought it was for me. because I always had a relationship with God, but I still struggled. I sold drugs and alcohol like my whole life. I was always either dealing or drinking or partying. There was always a party. But God was always in the midst of those things, and I would always bring the conversation to God. And no matter what I was doing, how drunk, how, just how late it was, I would always bring the conversation to God, because people who were partying always needed to hear God, and I knew they needed to hear about God. I just didn't have the authority to say anything, because I was not drawing on the power of God to overcome my problems and situations, so there was no power there, but the seeds were planted, I pray, and just before I came into Teen Challenge, it was 5 months before I came into Teen Challenge, is that Teen Challenge had come to my church and sang in the choir. And it was an awesome day. We had a church outing. I spent the day with them. We played football, actually. And I didn't say much about drugs, alcohol, or anything about Teen Challenge. I never even really had a conversation with the guys. But I spent the whole day in the water playing football with them.
Yeah.
And it was just an awesome day. And come to find out, 5 months later, God sat me down and he's like, okay, you're going to go to Teen Challenge. And I was like, wow, I'm going to Teen Challenge. And I knew if he said it, that I'm going to go.
Yeah.
5 days later, I was in Teen Challenge. That's one of the good things about Teen Challenge, is that most secular programs take, 6 weeks to 6 months to get into. You have to wait for a bed. And a lot of times people can't wait that period, so they go back out and use, and they never get into a program.
Yeah.
Teen Challenge, though, is typically under a week. Gavin does the intakes actually now, and it was amazing. 5 days later, I was in. The very first day I came in on my birthday, January 22nd, 2018.
Wow.
And it was awesome. And the very first class was a choir that was going on, and those guys who I had played football with were in that choir. And I didn't say a word. They didn't say a word. I didn't even know it was them. And they said, what's your name? And I said, Ron Federico. And they're like, we knew you. You were the guy who had played football. You had the good arm that day. And God had made a way for me to already have friends when I came in. He welcomed me, and it was really just, it was amazing. And I graduated on the 19th of last month. And now I'm doing an internship at Teen Challenge.
Wow, praise God, man. Praise God. Wow, give God some glory. That's awesome, man. And that's the piece, again, a trophy of God's grace. It's not anything that you've done, it's what God had did. I love how you say, because it's true, God sat you down. God moved on you in his time, not in your time. You couldn't bring yourself out of it. He had to bring you out.
Absolutely.
And that's awesome, Ron. Thank you so much, man, for sharing.
It's a blessing.
What about you, Gavin? I mean, this is your second trip here and everything. But there's folks here who haven't heard your story and what's going on, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm Gavin. 24 years old, grew up in Wells, Maine, and ever since I was a young kid, I was very impulsive. I mean, I was just always up to something, and growing up that in high school and going throughout school and stuff, I was very intelligent, but I was always smoking weed, or I'd always go drink with guys. I had ADHD meds, so I'd always abuse those once I figured out that they could add something to my life. And I ended up passing up all my opportunities that I had. I was going to get to go to college, I was going to play football, and I just couldn't stop partying, and the sad thing was I never really wanted to. And I remember being 18 years old, I totaled my car going down the highway, and then like a week later, I was pulled over again, drinking and driving, and I'm like, this is not good. And I decided I was going to join the military. Maybe that would straighten me up. Ended up making it into special operations. I thought I had it all figured out, and every time I'd go away training or come back from a deployment, I had money. Alcohol didn't seem like it was such a problem because I wasn't drinking every day, and I would just go off the chain. And eventually I ended up getting a couple DUIs, got kicked out of the military, landed myself in Texas, and got hooked on meth when I got out to Texas to go along with all of my drinking problems. Wow. And I was just like, this is insane. I grew up going to church with my family and stuff, but never really got in depth with it. And I was able to sit back and just be like, God's got a plan in my life somewhere, because I've totaled every car that I've ever had. I shouldn't be alive with what I've been doing. And I called out to my mom one night. She'd been sleeping with her phone for years, knowing how much of a mess I'd been, waiting for me to call from jail again or to hear some bad news. And I told her I was ready for a change. And the next morning I woke up from a blackout, and my dad was knocking on the door. My mom bought me a plane ticket, brought me home from Austin, Texas, and within a week I was through Teen Challenge. And Teen Challenge had been at my mom's church, and it was crazy because originally what I told my mom was, I was like, Mom, I want help, but it's not normal. But I was like, I can't do 30 days. I was like, it's just 30 days, 60 days, Mom, it's not going to work. I can't do it. I need something long term. I know I'm not going to like it, but it's the only chance I have at this. And so Teen Challenge was presented, and it was an amazing place. And it was a place that was definitely tailored to what I needed. God has definitely humbled me a lot through there. It's still a process to this day. But something that Teen Challenge really has that a lot of programs don't have is the love of the brothers. You get to walk into a place, and it's ministry. Like our brother said earlier, ministry, it takes money to run it, so we do a lot of work. We do a lot of outreaches. It's not like your typical program where you're meeting in meetings 24/7. You're out doing things, and you get to experience that with a bunch of guys on the same level, and it's truly a blessing. Not to say I haven't been frustrated multiple times in the program, but the love that's surrounded and the encouragement that you get from the guys, and knowing that that's the only thing that could really change a guy like me, it was the biggest blessing I've ever had in my life, and I'm forever thankful for that.
Awesome. I heard someone say who's going through Teen Challenge, I think it was Dave Webb, is one of the guys that I know, and he said to me, he's a graduate of a number of years, and he said, if there's anything that I learned at Teen Challenge is that it brought me to my knees. I had to get to the end of myself and actually cry out to God. It's what I'm hearing you guys say is, I can't do it, God. I can't do it. I don't have the strength to do it. I'm in tough situations. Yeah. I'm in tough, I'm frustrated. And that's the world, right? I mean, that's how it is outside here with everybody else, right? We hit situations where we get frustrated, we get upset, and then what? What do we do with that? Where do we go with that? And what I've heard the story of Teen Challenge, what you guys have said is, there's a choice that I have to make, and I've just heard this from different guys. I either choose myself and choose my own ways, or I decide to break. I think Grant was telling me this. Grant works in admissions as well. He said, I either break and I give myself over to God. And I want that to seep in for us this morning. Because as we talk about this morning, and we're going to look at Genesis 6, do we know who God is to be able to answer his call? Do we know God's voice? Are we done running life the way that we've been running it? And I think that's the message that I want to make sure that everyone hears is, I can't run my own life. I mess it up, right? I screwed it up big time. But what I heard you say, Gavin, in this, and I think this is the piece for moms as we talk about this too. Gavin, could you say that again? Where was your mom at? What was she doing? That whole piece. How long was this going on? You told me you picked up the phone and you said, Mom, I'm ready to go. How many years was that?
I mean, I remember calling her drunk and stupors and stuff since I was like 20 years old, wherever I was. I mean, she'd been sleeping with her phone for years, worried about me for years. Thank God that she was a Christian woman going to church and a praying mom, because I don't think she could have made it through all the stuff that I put her through. But it was kind of like an eye-opener to me when I woke up that morning and there was plane tickets just awaiting for me, because she knew that it was time and I knew that it was time as well. And it's an encouragement for people out there who may be in this with a loved one, that it is a race that sometimes it takes a long time for people, but there will come that time through prayer and trusting in the Lord that it will happen. And what my mom tells plenty of mothers nowadays is, she's like, it didn't happen on my time, but I'm forever thankful that it happened on his time, because through her prayers and reaching out to other people, my life was changed through the program. And it's definitely a tough journey to go through, though.
So I want to throw this out. If you're a mom or you're a friend, maybe you're struggling with addiction. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe you've got these same challenges, alcohol, drugs, or maybe you're like, that's not me. I'm not like Gavin and Ronnie. I'm just wrecking my life though. Teen Challenge. There's a Teen Challenge for women too.
There is.
And so Teen Challenge would take you. But the point here being is this: if you're a mom and you're looking and you've got a loved one who's struggling, who's running, who's wrecking their life, keep your phone under your pillow, by your pillow. Keep your phone close by and keep your prayers to God. Keep the wisdom that you're looking for with God's wisdom. Because you don't know whenever your son or when your daughter or that loved one, whoever that may be, picks up the phone or sits down at the kitchen table, puts their hand on you and says, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. Be ready, moms. Be ready. Because what I'm hearing here is, it takes a godly mom. It takes a godly mom.